Welcome in. Somewhere in the ocean right now, there is a machine longer than a soccer field. The United States Navy's Ohio-class submarine runs about 170 meters from bow to stern and weighs roughly 18,700 tons underwater. Heavier than a Second World War cruiser packed with a nuclear reactor spinning turbines, generators, pumps. A crew of around 150 people living inside a steel tube. By every instinct, a machine that big and that busy should be one of the loudest objects in the sea. And yet, when one of these submarines slips beneath the surface and goes on patrol, something strange happens. The combined navies of the world, with their satellites, their radar, their sonar, their aircraft, and their warships, routinely cannot find it, not for a day, for months at a time. A vessel the size of a skyscraper laid on its side simply vanishes into the water and stays vanished. So how does the loudest imaginable machine become one of the hardest things on Earth to locate? That is the puzzle. Let's take it apart piece by piece. Here is the plan for the next few minutes. We are going to answer one question: how a submarine hides, and we are going to answer it with physics, not with mystery. First, why the ocean is such a good hiding place. Why you cannot see radar or use GPS to find something underwater. Why the whole game comes down to a single thing: is sound. Then how a submarine makes itself quiet, how the ocean itself helps to hide it, how the hunters try to listen it back out of the dark. We will look at how a submerged submarine even knows where it is without GPS, how it gets its orders from home without giving itself away. And at the end, the real reason any country spends billions of dollars to build something this hard to find. Some of the exact numbers here are genuinely classified. Where they are, I will say so and give the best publicly reported estimate instead of pretending to a precision we don't have. Start with why the ocean hides things at all. On land, we find things with light and with radio waves. Your eyes use light, radar uses radio waves. GPS is just a very faint radio signal from satellites. All three are electromagnetic waves. All three are nearly useless. Underwater seawater is salty. Salt water conducts electricity, absorbs those waves almost immediately. The numbers are brutal. A GPS signal is cut to about 1% of its strength after traveling less than 3 centimeters into seawater. Radar and visible light fade out within meters. So a submarine 100 meters down might as well be behind a mountain. No satellite can see it, no radar can touch it. It cannot even receive GPS to know where it is. But there is one thing that travels beautifully through water, far better than it travels through air, and that thing is sound. In seawater, sound moves at roughly 1/500 meters per second, more than 4 times its speed. And low-frequency sound can carry for hundreds, even thousands of kilometers. So finding a submarine is not a seeing problem, it is a listening problem. Almost everything that follows comes from that one fact. Now hold that listening problem up against the size of the thing you are searching. The ocean covers about 360 million square kilometers, more than 2/3 of the entire surface of the planet. Its average depth is around 3,700 meters, close to 3.5 kilometers of water stacked from the seabed to the waves. That is an almost unimaginable volume of space, most of it pitch black, most of it never monitored by anything at all. Dropping a single submarine into that is like hiding one specific grain of sand on a continent of beaches. Then being told the grain is actively trying not to be found. A submarine does not have to outrun its hunters. It just has to be quiet enough that, in all of that water, the faint sound it does make never rises above the natural noise of the sea itself. So the entire craft of hiding a submarine turns out to be the craft of controlling sound. So how do you silence a machine the size of a building? You attack the noise at every source. Start with the outside. Modern submarines are covered in what are called anechoic tiles, rubber-like panels bonded to the hull that soak up an enemy's sonar pulses so that less of the ping bounces back. That also muffle the submarine's own internal sounds from leaking out into the water. Inside the loud machinery, the turbines and generators and pumps is mounted on cushioned rafts and isolation springs, that its vibration is absorbed instead of traveling through the hull and radiating into the sea. The reactor itself is designed so that at low speeds its coolant moves by natural circulation, hot water rising and cool water sinking without loud pumps running at all. And at the back, instead of an open spinning propeller, many modern submarines use a pump jet, a shrouded propulsor that holds off the submarine's single worst enemy, cavitation. Cavitation is what happens when a blade spins so fast that the water around it briefly boils into tiny vapor bubbles, then collapse with a sharp crack. To a listening microphone, a cavitating propeller is a bright, unmistakable rattle that can be heard from far away. The defense against it is simple and strict: run slow and run deep where higher pressure holds the bubbles down. A submarine's stealth is, more than anything else, discipline. The discipline of staying quiet. It is worth separating two kinds of submarine here, because they hide for different reasons. A hunter-killer submarine, Navy's label SSN, is built to chase other ships and other submarines. It needs speed and it needs to be able to sprint. A ballistic missile submarine labeled SSBN and nicknamed a boomer has essentially one job: disappear, stay disappeared, carrying nuclear missiles it hopes never to fire. The United States runs 14 Ohio-class boomers, each about 170 meters long. Britain's deterrent rides on 4 Vanguard-class boats, a little under 150 meters each. And the United States is now building the Columbia-class to replace the Ohios at around 171 meters and more than 20 tons submerged, some of the largest submarines America has ever built. A boomer's whole existence is organized around not being found. It does not hunt, it hides. And to hide, it leans on an ally that costs nothing at all: the ocean's own physics. Here is where the ocean starts actively helping. Sound does not travel through seawater in straight lines. Its speed changes with temperature, with pressure, with saltiness, because those things change with depth. A beam of sonar bends as it goes. Near the surface there is often a layer where the temperature drops sharply with depth, called the thermocline. Sound crossing, it gets refracted. Bent away, a submarine sitting just below that layer can be partly shielded from a searcher up above it. Deeper down, at around 800 to 10 meters in many parts of the ocean, the speed of sound reaches a minimum. That creates something remarkable: a natural pipe called the SOFAR channel, or the deep sound channel. Sound that enters it keeps getting bent back inward instead of escaping, so it can travel for thousands of kilometers. That cuts both ways because it helps the hunters listen too, but it lets a submarine's sound do surprising and confusing things. And all this bending of sound leaves gaps called shadow zones, pockets of water where the way the beams curve sonar simply cannot reach. A submarine that understands the water around it can slide into a shadow zone and become, for that particular searcher, effectively invisible. Now flip to the hunter's side. There are two ways to use sound to find a submarine. The first is active sonar. Send out a loud ping and listen for the echo, exactly like a bat. It works, but it carries a fatal flaw. The moment you ping, every submarine for miles around knows precisely where you are, while you have learned only roughly where it might be. In a duel between submarines, whoever pings first often loses. So the real game is the second method, passive sonar, saying nothing at all, just listening, straining to pick a submarine's faint, deliberate whisper of noise out of the background, roar of waves, rain, distant ships, sea life. This is enormously hard. A quiet modern submarine can be softer than the ocean around it. Detection ranges are short, they depend on the exact water conditions on that exact day. A contact can flicker into view for a few minutes and then melt straight back into the noise. Finding a submarine is not a steady radar blip. It is a fragile, fleeting, uncertain thing, here one moment and gone the next. That is why the hunt takes a whole arsenal and a great deal of patience. During the Cold War, the United States laid a secret network of microphones across the seafloor called SOSUS, the Sound Surveillance System, using the deep sound channel to listen for Soviet submarines across entire oceans. Its first prototype, 40 hydrophones strung out near the Bahamas in 1952, could detect an acoustic signal weaker than a single watt at ranges of hundreds of kilometers. In 1985, SOSUS was folded into a wider effort called the Integrated Undersea Surveillance System, added mobile ships trailing long listening cables behind them. From the Air Maritime Patrol aircraft like the U.S. Navy's P-8 Poseidon drop sonobuoys, small floating microphones, more than 100 of which a single aircraft can carry. Some aircraft carry a magnetic anomaly detector that senses the tiny distortion a steel hull makes in the Earth's magnetic field, though only at very close range. Warships and helicopters add towed arrays and dipping sonar lowered on a cable into the water. It is, genuinely, a global machine built for listening. And still, against a modern boomer running slow and deep on the right day in the right water, all of it can come up empty. There is one more problem a hidden submarine has to solve, and it is a strange one. If it cannot receive GPS underwater, how does it know where it is, especially a boomer that would have to launch its missiles accurately? The answer is inertial navigation. The submarine carries extremely precise gyroscopes and accelerometers that track every turn and every acceleration from a known starting point, continuously calculating its own position by dead reckoning with no outside signal required at all. And how does it get orders from home without surfacing and revealing itself? Through very low-frequency radio. Ordinary radio cannot reach it. Very low and extremely low-frequency waves can push a short distance down into seawater. Enough that a submarine near the surface or trailing a long wire antenna out behind it can receive a message. The catch is that these frequencies are painfully slow. An extremely low-frequency signal can take many minutes just to send a handful of letters. So the flow of information is almost entirely one way. Shore stations and specially equipped aircraft broadcast, and the submarine listens and stays silent, transmitting almost nothing, because to transmit is to be found. Its safety is built, once again, on the discipline of keeping its mouth shut. So step back and ask the real question, why? Why pour billions of dollars into making a skyscraper-sized machine impossible to find? The answer is the single most important idea in nuclear strategy, and it is called the second strike. A country's nuclear weapons on land, missiles in silos, and bombers on runways can in theory be located and destroyed in a surprise first strike. An enemy can see roughly where they are, but you cannot destroy what you cannot find. A ballistic missile submarine hidden somewhere in 360 million square kilometers of ocean can ride out that first strike and still answer it. That is why the United States describes its ballistic missile submarines as the most survivable leg of its nuclear forces. Why its Ohio submarines carry the majority of America's deployed nuclear warheads out at sea. The whole point is deterrence. No rational enemy launches a first strike if it knows that a handful of submarines it cannot locate will survive to strike back. The silence is not just stealth. The silence is the entire argument. You cannot kill what you cannot find so precisely by being impossible to find. These submarines are built in the hope that they never have to be used at all. That is the paradox resolved. The loudest imaginable machine hides not by being fast, not by being armored, by mastering a single thing: sound inside an ocean that with a little physics is quietly on its side. We keep this channel to real numbers, named sources, and honest limits on what is public and what is classified. If you want more of these taken apart this carefully, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.